morning, everyone. So welcome to our Retail Group breakfast event, as I said. We have had a few issues with this event. You know, the Queen happened to die and therefore we had to reschedule. So we do apologise. We've had to move it twice already, once due to the floods and then once due to the public holiday. So thank you all for coming here today. And we're hoping to take you on a bit of a journey around the world today, talking about retail innovations and what we are seeing globally in the world of retail. So firstly, just a bit of housekeeping. There's tea and coffee, food at the back, so feel free to help yourself. Exits back where you came in, and we've got at the side as well. Bathrooms are back upstairs where you came from. And if you do need to leave early, we completely understand that. If you've got meetings, we will aim to wrap up at 9:30 because we know everyone's very busy and have to get on with the day. So no problem if you do need to leave early, again, back in the way that you came. We are recording the event as well today, so if you want to pass it on to other people, or you want to do listen to it again, for whatever reason, there will be a live recording. It's not going live, it will be available afterwards, and there will also be a download. The pack that we're going to take you through today is just a few examples out of our larger pack. So you will actually be able to download the full pack, which will have even more innovations of what's happening. So just very quickly, Retail Group, we are partners with Ebeltoft Group. So we are the Australian partners of the global group of consultants, Ebeltoft Group. So one quick thing before we start, you may see on your table, maybe the QR codes out. Hopefully, Jamie, can you just pop a QR code? I think they're all on the front desk here. Can you pop one on everyone's table? Thank you. On the QR codes, we are today launching Australian retail innovators. So it's live today. The QR code will take you to the website, and you can nominate either your business or you can nominate another retailer that you think is really innovative in one of the key areas. And what happens here is we will host our Australian Retail Innovations Awards in March this year at Retail Fest. There'll be a full gala lunch awards session. So for all of the finalists, so it goes to nominations, to finalists, and all the finalists will get free tickets to Retail Fest, and then the finalists will all get put forward to the 2024 Global Retail Innovators. So there is actually some Australians here today. They will win us from the Australian Retail Innovations in 2020. And we are now just preparing for next year's with this year's, right, 2021 with this year's winners. So it'll be nice to see some homegrown talent that have come up through all of the country. So without further ado, I'll pass across to Brian Walker, CEO of Retail Group, to give us a bit of an introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anastasia. Is there a clicker there? We'll use it online. Okay, it should be working. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Great to have you with us. Small, nice crowd, which is brilliant. So, Retail Group has been involved with the Ebeltoft Group for well over 10 years now. It's given us the reach. Perhaps another way of saying it is that we meet once or twice a year around the world somewhere and look at retail, work with retailers overseas, work with the advisors and consultants. And it's very much about bringing the touch and the reach of international retail to Australia, and of course to Australian retailers seeking to go overseas. And today I'm delighted to be sharing the time with Anastasia, our Chief Operating Officer, Blaine Callard, CEO of Freedom, and Matthew Kenny, CEO of Zambrero. And we'll move through this next set of showing you some of the examples around the world. And then I've got the pleasure of hosting the panel with Anastasia and the gentleman mentioned. I thought we might start just a really quick look at this thing called e-commerce, because whilst the theme is global innovation, the fact is, and we all know how much of an accelerant technology has been. And Blaine and I were talking this morning, and you probably heard me talk about this divide between shopping and buying. Recently, I was talking to our German member who was saying that, for example, the Amazon 3PL is ripping through European retail. And where it's doing its damage, if you like, or where it's getting its growth, is in that buying space, that commoditized retail. And as we see here, global online sales are expected to continue to rise. By 2025, the share of global online commerce on average will move to 26.16%, largely in that commoditized buying space. So, next slide. And so why I say that? Because it's really thinking about how retailers are adapting, how they're integrating, and how in turn they're thinking about their customer centricity. I'll touch a little bit about this. So that's the Ebeltoft Group. We're actually a shareholder in this particular operation, which is interesting. But they do some phenomenal work around the world. So do feel free to go onto ebeltoftgroup.com and you'll see more about them. And Global Retail Innovations, as a piece of work, makes its way to the National Retail Federation Awards in January each year, hosted in New York, and the finalists make their way through. So this piece of work will pick off some finalists globally, which again will go into New York, and then our Australian Retail Innovations will make its way through. As Anastasia touched, we've got 3 Aussie finalists making their way through. And so some of the questions the Global Retail Innovations answer. Well, what are retailers doing around the world and how are they adapting? How are they evolving? How are they adapting? How innovative are they? And what are the main game changes? What does that mean for the Australian market? What does it mean from an omni-channel retail perspective? Are there technologies there that are being thought through, innovated on, that we can bring into our retail businesses here in Australia? But importantly, how are the leaders thinking about their business models in a new way? How are they taking a clean sheet of paper to their model and thinking about it in an entirely different way? For years we've grown up with this idea of product centricity. How do we think about this omni-channel, kaleidoscopic customer that moves across channels, moves across brand touch points seamlessly and increasingly? So therefore, how do retailers think about this? Blending online and offline experiences. And again, that point around the customer at the center, how do we bring that into innovation? How do we bring this into adaptation? So we talk about the new world matrix in the consumer or customer expectations. And the way that the Ebeltoft Group have looked at this is on the axis of out-of-store, in-store efficiency and engagement. Now, some of the areas we'll look at today are sustainability, of course. Some of the examples look at the area of engagement out of store as one of the categories. Live stream shopping, personalized experiences, virtual personal shoppers, and so forth. We'll go through those. Engagement in store, this concept of building communities, this concept of personalization, brand storytelling, gamification. Efficiency out of store, last mile, fast deliveries, smart orders, subscription, virtual product experiences, this seamless movement between the channels. Efficiency in store, of course, is how digitalization is making its way into the physical shopping experience and how retailers around the world are thinking about this a bit differently. Takes us into smart services, robotics in store, smart shelves, in-store communication. And of course, sustainability. I'm delighted to talk a little bit further on this with the panel. But looking at circular incentives, using sustainable materials, all through increased transparency. And Anastasia will share how millennials, Jen said, after are really thinking and voting on sustainable practices exhibited by retailers.
All right, so we're just going to go into each of the different sections and give you a few examples of what we're seeing. So the first one, engagement out of store. So as we can imagine, US is leading the way here. We see this mashup between Walmart and Mashable. So what happened here is they've created a 3D home experience. And what this allows the user to do is to sit in their home and quite cleverly walk through 6 rooms within a 3D model of another home and purchase those products through Walmart. So it creates that out-of-home, in-store shopping engagement. So bringing that 3D ability into the user's home. So really creating that link between customer interaction whilst they're in each of the rooms. So imagine you're walking through the kitchen. You can select a product. It will give you information on that product. You can watch videos on that product. You can then purchase it through Walmart and get it delivered to you. So it really is taking that in-home shopping experience to that next level.
One of the pieces to this is the emerging marriage, if you like, between technology, media, and retail. Prime is an easy and simple example of that, the Amazonian Prime model. But this is a nice model too because it talks about collaborations, partnerships that would normally not be interlinked, and using independent expertise such as nationals, the agency, and Walmarts, and combining. So getting retailers to think very differently.
The next one is one that everyone has heard of. We kept this thing because there's quite a few really interesting things here. It is now the #1 social media app in the US. It has surpassed Amazon as the most downloaded shopping app in the US again. So if we think about that, we know that 1 in 2 US households has Amazon Prime. So if we now think about the size of Shein, really surpassing Amazon across all of these levels, it's using data science to actually predict the trends, which I think is really quite interesting here. So rather than just predicting on a personal level, it's predicting what's going to be the next fashion trend. So using that artificial intelligence, it's now the largest online fashion company in the world. So we're really seeing that growth. But on the other side of the scale, what they're also doing is they've managed to reduce production times to 1 week. So again, using this artificial intelligence to understand what the consumer is purchasing, what the next trend is going to be, and therefore produce products really quickly and get them shipped around the world. I must admit, I had experience in myself. I purchased a dress for the National Retail Awards a couple of weeks ago. Was impressed that it arrived within a week. Perfect fit, didn't even have to send it back. And I got many comments on the site, so I was quite surprised at the experience I had through this. So. Next, moving on to Balbiceria. I thought I said that one right.
That's Spain.
But in Spain. So this is an online bakery, and what happened here is obviously they were a B2B online bakery, and then COVID hit, and they had all of these issues. So during that period, what they did is they turned it around and actually became a direct-to-consumer model. The founder is a lady called Paula, and what she did is she acted as an influencer. And we've got here Instagram, and everyone goes, Instagram, we all know about Instagram. But instead of a classical marketing tool, they used Instagram as a communication tool, as a way to create their community and to talk to their community. So when they finally opened their first bakery, they used Instagram as a way to communicate and invite people in, and really created a group of loyal followers. So it really was taking this, what was a B2B model, into a direct-to-consumer model. And what I thought was really quite interesting, they had a delivery warranty for cakes. So you know your cake is going to arrive, and you know it's going to arrive in good condition, which is really quite interesting, especially given that they deliver throughout mainland Spain. So it was quite a large delivery area, but they were still having this delivery guarantee.
I think what's interesting with the previous example, Sam in China, Anastasia in Spain, is the heavy use focus on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and so forth, as building the brand, really building the brand. So thinking about this armory of social media, online, both are absolutely critical to success.
Now the next talk about engagement also without touching on metaverse, the topic that's on our lips. So Robotic Car in Brazil. Now this was a really interesting way of bringing the store environment and the digital environment together. So this is actually a family-owned business. It's a cosmetics manufacturer, founded in 1977, and it's the largest retailer in Brazil with footprint. They have 4,000 stores. And what was quite interesting here is they created this metaverse environment to attract a new type of consumer. They were really into that Gen Z consumer. And the goal was that you could go into the metaverse and purchase products that you could then pick up in the physical store. But they also turned it into a game, so it's called Avakin Life. Now, I'm not trendy enough to know how this works in the universe, but I'm guessing the Gen Z, you play the game, you win, and I'm going to check my notes here, you win a special type of body coins. So you win body coins, but then you can use body coins to purchase items in the physical store as well as the virtual store. So we can see this connection to drive them into the physical store. You can also use your body coins to purchase virtual makeup to put on your avatar. So it's this whole circular engagement between the physical store, the virtual store, and the gamification, which I thought was really interesting here.
Game. You can
Participate in beauty quests, they call them, or you can learn about to get your body coins. So this whole gamification of the brand, the driving people to the physical store through when they first engaged in the virtual metaverse was really quite interesting here.
All right, we now want the engagement.
And it's a question asked about the physical store.
One of the things, if you haven't seen, we conduct research every few months into and we really are
seeing consumers to watch the store because they want that physical interaction. They want to speak to people. They're actually using retail for the purpose of entertainment now. So we've coined it retail-tainment. You know, visiting the retail store
have
to have an experience, want to interact.
So we
really are, as everyone in the room is probably well aware, in the research that we're doing, we're seeing the consumers return to that physical space.
I think what we're seeing is the re-emergence of brand storytelling. And if your environment, your retail environment has a story about it, it's something that's emotionally engaging. Some of these examples do, which is important.
the first
one is really interesting. So it's Lego in Spain. Now, I had the pleasure of sitting next to this year's young retailer, and he was from Lego, and he was telling me about this new breed of stores, and we actually have one in Melbourne. So if you are in Melbourne, he told me to check out the new store that just opened in Melbourne. So this is the one in Spain. And what they're doing is they're branding the stores very local. So in this store, there is a Lego model of the Sagrada Familia, and it's very local to the area. But what makes the store interesting is it's got these interactions. So you can go in the photo booth store, put your photo in, and they'll turn that into Lego for you. And then you go home and you build it, which I thought was absolutely astonishing. So I'm imagining myself building a Lego of my dog because I put the photo in. Perfect present for my partner. So next time I'm in Melbourne, that's Steve's birthday. But also as well, you can make your own
figure. So if anyone
wants to Lego swap figures, you can go and decide what you want it to
look like, you print your own figure
to
go in.
So there's quite a lot of
digital
interactions, but also this experience of, you are in Madrid, you are in Spain, and you are seeing the very much Spanish aspects of the store while you're inside.
I think also we're seeing the rise of the home as a very important portal for retailers to think about in terms of their strategy. This example of being able to image back into the physical store from the home life and so forth, and we've seen it in some of the furniture iterations around the world, really changes the dynamic and makes this whole ecosystem start to come to life. And Lego are natural storytellers anyway, and they've got a natural theatrical brand. So you can see the role of technology playing its part there.
We next moved to Germany. This was also quite an interesting one, linking a bit to what we talked about in the first section. This is Sally Wells' flagship store. So Sally is one of the most successful bloggers in Germany. So 1.6 million
followers on her YouTube. So she's up her own range of cooking products. So your typical
gadgets,
tools,
food products, being sold online. So back in March 2020, she set up her first physical store in Germany. And what she's doing now is in the store, you're able to try the products, experience making with Sally, QR codes to get explanatory videos to help you understand how to use the product and how to be a better product. So it's really, again, this interaction in store to create that experience. So it's much more of a physical experience, led by Sally. So Sally is the influencer, she's the face of the brand. And it basically means that you can walk into
blogger's life.
So that's what I think is quite interesting. And we all see these bloggers, you can walk into the life of a blogger and you can be that blogger and you can see how she brings all of her products to life.
I think that's a remarkable thing to say, right? Just think about, here's a blogger, an influencer, has a following, and translates that following into a physical environment. And then keeps evolving and adapting accordingly. And what's also interesting on that point too is that, again, the rise of social media moving into social commerce, the direct economic benefit from being an influencer as well, which this business has.
So this one's really quite interesting. This is how rituals in the Netherlands. So they've opened a full-floor beauty in the middle of Amsterdam. But rather than it being a classic beauty store like we see in the centre of Sydney with makeup, this is aimed at making you feel good. So I quite like this idea of a breathing bubble and a brain massage. So you've got all these different areas within the store where you can experience wellness. It's not so much about purchasing the products, it's about the wellness experience. There's a spa within the store, there's a luxury perfume bar where you can make your own perfume, and then it's a lot more of a focus on that emotional and mental well-being. So it's really turning the beauty concept around. So rather than being the products, it's about how you make yourself feel good. And all aspects of the store are aimed at that. So it sounds like a full-store luxury retreat.
Nearly every one of these examples doesn't start at the store, doesn't start in the physical environment. It starts well offline, and it starts through social, online, and so forth. And the shop or physical environment is a confirmation of that. And that's an important distinction when we think about the evolution of retail.
So we next move back to Brazil. This is Zambrero in Brazil. It is now one of the largest beauty brands in the world after acquisition of the Body Shop and Avon. So previously known for selling door to door, they've now moved into that physical space. So it's really pulling all of the different potential channels into one area. So they've now got over 500 stores supporting their omnichannel strategy, while still having the door-to-door sales and the very different aspects. We've actually made the store into quite an art gallery as well, so it's not just purely a selling store. And this comes back, I suppose, to how we opened up this chapter. It's about that experience. It's about something worth leaving the house for. It's entertainment in the retail store. So it's very much that art gallery. You can try the products, you can have customized products. It's quite similar to what we just talked about house of rituals, but this is in the more product focus.
I think with Natura too, they are a multi-channel operation. So door-to-door salespeople all the way through to the physical environment, to the online space. So they've looked at their brand and said, okay, what are the revenue opportunities for this brand? How do we link this around a story? So I think they've done well.
Now, the next one is a personal favourite. If anyone hasn't guessed, I am from the UK, and I have drank a lot of wine and tea. Sorry, Richard, there's a lot of tea. And I have actually the pleasure of visiting the store in London. So if you are in London, in the centre of the in a very old building, this store actually opened in 1796. So the store itself has been there for hundreds of years. But what is very interesting, they take you on a tea journey. So from the minute you walk, it's got this very old British heritage, and you walk through the 4 phases of tea, and they show you the different types of tea from what you can buy off the shelf, how to make tea yourself, and they can take you all the way through the journey. There's a tea tasting room that you can hire for your events, and rather than a wine tasting experience, tea tasting experience, and you can really learn everything there is to know about tea in a very British way, as you can imagine. So this is a fantastic way of engaging the customer through that journey. Tell you, I had a big bag of tea and then couldn't figure out how to put it in my suitcase to get back to Australia, and then getting it through customs was a different as well. So it was very much an interesting experience in store.
Large screens, immersive experience, and looking at retail as an educator, a brand as an educator. So there's the emotion of drinking tea, which they tap into, but they're educating on how tea's grown and so forth. So what they're trying to do here, I think very successfully, is immerse the customers, leaving them with knowledge. So the currency is knowledge.
This next one, JD China, everyone's heard of JD. So what was quite interesting is they've now opened at the end of September 2021, so it's been open a year now, the JD Mall. So it's a whole mall designer selling JD products. So it's bringing an online experience into a physical experience. So again, it was purely that online layer. It's got 11 themed areas. So as a customer, you can walk into all the different areas within the mall, experience the products, purchase the products, potentially get them delivered home. It's got this seamless interaction between purchase and viewing the products. It's got these 29 experience zones, so it's taking again it to this next level of customers being able to interact with the product. So purely an online player, this mall's bringing it to life.
And very, very strong focus on digital integration. So as consumers, you can have a digital experience with this mall outside the mall. Your ID is carried into the mall, and then you, through various coding, you're able to give feedback, experience the mall, experience all the retailers. And in JD's case, they man most stores with their own staff, which is interesting.
And what was also quite interesting from the back end is they actually use this mall as a dispatch warehouse as well. So it's a dispatch warehouse for instant deliveries, which is quite that interesting idea of how we use the space. They've got that twofold. All right, we next move into efficiency out of store. So quite a few interesting ones here. So the first one, all be washed from South Africa, and also one in Melbourne, I heard. Now, efficiency comes here through the ability to wash your car without ever leaving your house. So you can do it all together. So you can download it. You can book your time to have your car washed, come to your house at the time that you want. You can monitor it all through the app, a bit like you do in Uber. It's free. You can see what time they're coming, how far through the process they are. You can pay through the app. You never have to interact with that person. So it was all born out of the COVID, but it's again quite an efficient way to have that. And they've also added to it this eco-friendly aspect. So it uses water-wise systems, water-wise technology, so that you know that you're also having that sustainable option. There's also physical environment as well. So if you don't want someone to come to your house, you can take your car, you can book it in, you can do the whole transaction through the app, but you can take your car to the wash. Mike's looking it up now in Melbourne, aren't you? You've seen where your nearest one is. I can see him looking. Fantastic. Next one, Foxtrot. So these was really looking at how to reimagine convenience for the Gen Z. So we can see quite a lot of that focus on this Gen Z consumer. As probably everyone knows, our millennials now the largest spending demographic. So millennials anyone 26 to 39. Our Gen Z now really moving into that powerful demographic. So anyone up to the age of 25 is now in that Gen Z segment. So what this saw that was interesting, it brought that convenience to the next level. So the store changes as the day goes on. So in the morning it's breakfast, it's offering you coffee and croissants and takeaway pastries. In the lunchtime it turns into a cafe. In the evening it turns into a wine bar. So it really morphs through the day to give you exactly what you want at every point in time. So it really is that convenience offering, as well as having grab and go food, takeaway products. And again, all done if you want to through the digital. If you can order the products through the digital, you don't have to pay in store, you can do it all online. So really morphing those to the convenience aspect.
Yeah, I mean, in and of itself, we're seeing other examples of that. What I do think is interesting is that we'll soon start to not talk about omnichannel. Soon start to talk about the brand and the way the brand goes to market. Because in and of itself, what I think we're really seeing here is this idea of catering for a customer, building community, and building an integrated live experience, both online and physical, which will become the norm for all retail.
And one thing that our research has showed us is that consumers are getting much more information. So you are either sitting in this retailing experience, which we just talked about, or you're sitting in this convenience. And consumers really are much more impatient. They want what they want when they want at any time of the day. So we're really looking, and we're seeing more and more retailers looking, how can we save our customers time? We remove the friction from their experience to really produce convenience aspect. Now, this one was really quite interesting. The that car from Germany. This is a robotic car, and you can take it like you would have a cab or a bus. It will stop, take to you, and you can either through the app or through the digital screens order the products that you want. It will give you the steps that you want, and then it will continue, pull back in the traffic, keep driving. So it drives it around a route in the city of Germany. And as a consumer, you can say, I want the snack, I can see the car's about to come past my house, past my office, and you go and plug it down, which I think is really quite an interesting, quite forward-thinking trend there.
Kind of like robotic Mr. Whitney.
That's what's going to happen in Australia. The Australian version will be exactly that. Okay. Lincoln Car in Sweden, this is an automotive company. Now, again, depending on the convenience factor, what they developed is a monthly subscription for luxury vehicles. So as a user, you can opt into a subscription. The subscription for car, your insurance for you and your family, so anyone can drive it that you want. And you can cancel that subscription anytime. So at any point, once a month, you can cancel that subscription, but you get access to a luxury hybrid vehicle. And then if at any point you decide you want to keep that vehicle, you can purchase it. But I think it's quite an interesting concept in this move towards subscription memberships. So how we see that usage and how we see that make it easier for me. Give me everything I need, insurance, car, up-to-date model, hybrid as well, which obviously is top of mind at the moment. And then give it to me in an easy fashion, single monthly payments.
One of the trends we're seeing is people moving in time away from ownership, more into leasing, more into occasion-based renting and so forth. And that's a nice example of that.
And here we come into our first Australian finalist. So we put forward all of the 2021 Australian retail finalists. There's around 20 put forward into the hundreds from obviously you can see around the world. Our first Australian was Mecca. Now, Mecca was put forward due to the engagement they did during COVID, so 2021. What was quite interesting, if anyone hasn't seen this, is they turned the virtual world so customers could have virtual appointments, they could try on makeup virtually, they could attend virtual classes. And then when the stores reopened, they brought that into the physical store as well. So it really made that customer engagement and experience really go between the two worlds, but keep their customers in the loop during the pandemic and during the lockdown. All right, the fourth category, efficiency in store. So how do we make our store environments more efficient? Again, these impatient customers, these pesky millennials that want everything immediately, how do we make it easier for them to engage with us? So the first one was Typee from Germany. So this is a robotics meat supermarket. So really extreme convenience. It's a 24/7 supermarket. We've seen some examples of this in China over the last few years as well. So you can order online using your mobile phone, and the robot will pack your bags and have it ready for you to collect. Or you can walk into the physical store and select what you want and order it in the digital screens in store, and the robot will pack your order at the back and bring it to you. So it's all robotics. It's very much a safe store environment, no interactions with people. But it really is meeting the needs of the local communities. So these are small stores put in specific places with a specific range of products to really tailor to that local community.
It certainly meets the criteria of efficiency, whether it's a theatrical sort of shopping experience, it's highly developed, but it's using and the growing use of robotics.
This next one, Amazon. Amazon's opened a hair salon. Is there anything Amazon is not going to do next? So Amazon opened a hair salon in the UK, and this was to support their beauty category. And what you could do is you could go to the hair salon, you could use augmented reality to test out different hairstyle hair colours before you had the product, before you had the cut. You could interact with the product, so you could point to the products that were on display in the store, and you would get information on that product automatically using digital sensors. So just by pointing, it would tell you about that product, what it was good for. You could then order the product immediately, and it would send the order to Amazon, and you would have it delivered to your house within 2 hours. So it's this whole interaction of going into the beauty salon, and if anyone needs to ask the hairdresser any questions, this takes away that whole need. And yes, I'm going to the hairdresser this week, and I hate having to pick a haircut and ask questions about the products. It moves it all into that virtual space for the user. So really creating an efficient journey.
And of course, being Amazon, it's not just in isolation and solo, it's part of their large community build. And no doubt you've inundated lots of offers to join Prime and so forth.
Yes, I think it's definitely that promotional aspect. It's quite an interesting concept. The next one, we come back to Australia. So this is the Between Flags store. It's at Bondi. Has anyone visited the Between the Flags store at Bondi? Yeah. So fantastic use of how do we make it a bit easier for the customers to purchase items. The one thing we want them all to do. So removing the where the blockages were. So rather than having one kiosk to purchase, they put many digital kiosks around the shop. And within these digital kiosks, it was using this queue buster station, they called them. So therefore, because they were noticing they were having queues through the shop, which stopped people browsing, stopped people being able to ask questions, and more importantly, stopped people being able to purchase. So this use of the virtual queue busters meant that customers could interact, they could look for product information, they could look for sizes that were potentially not on the shop floor, without having to interact with the sales staff who might have been busy serving other customers at the time.
And as this type of technology becomes common, stores will reconfigure their shop size, their footprint size, the style. They'll think about it very quickly. And the touch technology here that they use also gives us all the great metrics and data that we need as retailers around the back-end performance, not just of inventory, but of visitation time and so forth, and dwell time.
And this next one is goods. This is from Switzerland, the first one we've seen in Switzerland. And it's very interesting that it's particularly around connectivity via the app. So it's sustainable products, but really are selected for that grab and go convenience. So again, quite similar to some of the other ones that we've seen, but using technology so you can order by the app, you can use electronic shelf tags, and really creating this whole digital journey for the customer, just to make it easier. So really having that convenience in store, that mobility, being able to buy the products that they want through the digital means. And finally, our last category, we move into sustainability. So this was one of the big consumer trends that we've obviously seen for the last 5 years. 2020, during COVID, it went a little bit quieter, but we've definitely seen it come back with a vengeance through the eyes of the consumers. And what's really quite interesting is different consumers have got very different needs in this area. So I think really understanding what they're looking for. This first one, green pea from Italy, this was really quite interesting. So this came from the Faranetti family, who have got Euro and Italy. So I think a lot of people have heard of the Italy example. And the goal of this was to shift the focus from the green, from rather than a sense of duty to a sense of beauty and style. So rather than feeling you have to do sustainability, they created an environment that was very much stylish. So all aspects of the building and sustainability that was sustainable. So it was built from recycled trees, and it's got its own wind turbine, 2 large solar daisies. I'm not too sure what that is, but 2 large solar daisies, and it's powered by geothermal wells. So it's the whole building is really looking at that whole sustainability aspect in a different manner. It's also got an information gallery. So again, we're turning retail into this experience and into this education. Really quite an interesting take on sustainable.
It carves out its purpose through sustainability and making a sustainable difference, which is an important element of that particular offer.
This next one I found really quite clever in the way that they've done this. This is a co-op, which is a Danish grocery giant. So what it does is it allows consumers to track their carbon footprint. So when you place your shopping order, at the end of the order, you can click a button that says, what is my footprint for this order? So it looks at all the products that you purchased, and it calculates your climate footprint of each of those products, including the delivery, including how much of the products were made, and then it tells you what your footprint is. It then allows you to compare yourself to other users, so to know, are you a great climate person, or are you ordering all the bad products? So this was really quite an interesting concept. So it also brings in that competitive. Am I more climate conscious than others? Am I ordering the right products? But also for those that really are interested in their footprint, gives you the granularity of what impact you're having. Next one, this one, All 21 Romania. This one I was reading last night. I actually couldn't believe this was a thing. This allows you to buy pieces of the animal. So you order your meat, and everyone orders their meat, and the animal is not slaughtered until the whole animal has been bought. which I think was quite an interesting concept of reducing waste. So it's a new take on how do we reduce waste. So it's that group buying concept mixed with waste reduction. So someone orders, you know, a particular part. I mean, my dog would not hear in ordering the thigh bones of the cow. But it was really quite an interesting concept, but I was also quite surprised that someone's come up with this.
Well, I guess, taste aside, it's innovative in that sense.
Very
And it
nice.
does think, which is a good thing.
And I think for the other side, for the aspects that there was also said that because it's the animals are slaughtered, you know, it allows them to pack it very freshly. It allows the safety aspects that you'd usually have through going to local farms are removed. So this was also quite an interesting concept, that there might be issues with buying local and sustainable, but given that it's all done so quickly and freshly, it removes all of those. And then we come to our final case, which is actually our final Australian case as well. So this is Good Sammy Enterprises, and they are based out of Western Australia. So Good Sammy do retail a bit differently. They operate around 27 op shops, so a fairly small operation. However, what they do is they actually have a purpose of being able to give skills to disabled people. So they bring disabled people in to run their stores and they give them the training. They then bring in other professionals, so retail professionals that collaborated with local universities to give the people skills that they wouldn't necessarily have. So such things like visual merchandising, how to make patterns. Even during lockdown, they decided to pivot and give them digital skills. So they were training them in all the digital aspects of retail. So it's quite a strong core value in that their goal is to train people in the hope that they then can move on to other jobs in the industry. So it really is quite an interesting one. And we do have, if it's going to work for me, a little video. Let me see. Oh, okay, bear with me. So we have got a video from Good Sammy, who will just want to say a little thank you.
Absolutely delighted as CEO of Good Sammy to receive the Global Retail Innovation Award for Sustainability. Good Sammy is a not-for-profit Western Australian charity where we employ people with disability and help their development in.
Sorry, technology. James telling me it's not coming from the main screen. Bear with me. Yes, unfortunately. There it goes. Apologies.
I'm absolutely delighted as CEO of Good Sammy to receive the Global Retail Innovation Award for Sustainability. Good Sammy is a not-for-profit Western Australian charity where we employ people with disability and help their development. We employ 45% of our workforce with disability without any retail enterprises that have social outcomes in Western Australia. We have over 5 thrift stores selling second-hand items to 30,000 Western Australians each week. Our logistics social enterprise. We have an academy social enterprise. And we have recycling and e-commerce social. I welcome every person to come to Western Australia to visit a Good Sammy store and also to think about the importance of disability employment for having a diverse, inclusive workforce that best represents the communities in which we operate. It is just such an honour to be held in the same regard as household names such as IKEA, Monoprix, Coop, Mercedes-Benz. Thank you so much on behalf of the Good Sammy team. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay. Fantastic. So that wraps up our take around the world. It's a little bit longer, but there's quite a lot to go through. And that's only a fraction of actually what is in the final pack. So at the end of today, we will send you all the links so you can download the full pack if you want to have a look at what else is happening. You mentioned, yeah, there was a case from Mercedes, there's a case from IKEA. There's some really interesting examples in each of those 5 areas of what is happening around the world. Yeah, I particularly like the Lego example, and I will be using it. Fantastic. Well, we'd now like to welcome Blaine Callard, CEO of Freedom, and Matthew Kenny, CEO of Zambrero, to come and have a bit of a
Come and join us. And we'll also invite Anastasia to come and join us.
Now, I'm afraid we only have one mic that we're going to have to share, I'm afraid.
That's easy.
Well, thank you very much. I think starting at the start, this whole topic today is really around something called innovation. And if you think about innovation, how would you describe it, I suppose, as a starting point? Blaine, I'll ask you to come in.
Thanks. This is yours.
Sorry, there you go.
Good morning. Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Well, I was just watching that, and I think sometimes when you see examples like that as a retailer, it can actually be quite overwhelming to try to think about how you can go and replicate something like that. And I think one of the challenges with innovation, which help define how we see it, is that it's you can think of it as things like, you know, the iPad or Tesla or you know, a unique business model like Uber, something at a grand scale. And I think actually, you know, innovation at its most simple form is solving customers' problems or solving business problems. It's actually about critical thinking, wrong-footing your competitor, eking out some competitive differentiation that might allow you to charge more for the same product or might help you to reduce costs. So it's actually a fairly basic concept when you strip it back to that. And I think that sometimes it's the awe in which people use that word that sort of inhibits a lot of businesses from thinking about innovation. So I think the other thing about innovation that's worth mentioning is, and we see it particularly when these are global level innovative retailers, is a really common theme there with many, but not all, was that innovation equals technology. And I think that can be a blocker as well, to assume that, you know, if it's not a tech innovation, it's not an innovation. I mean, there's an enormous amount of innovation that a business can do around its processes, around its culture, around its products, around its simple in-store experiences, or that aren't necessarily technologically linked. So I think that can be a blocker as well. And the last point I'd make about innovation is I think that sometimes there's a misnomer that it's additive, that innovation is about adding something to your offer or making your offer a little bit more complex, you know, adding value, enhancing the customer experience with more. Let's give them this and that when they buy this. And I think sometimes innovation can be about doing less. And I think about brands like IKEA, where the business model is that you build the stuff yourself. You've got to go into their warehouse and get it. You've got to stick it on a trolley. You've got to roll it to your own car. They won't even deliver. I mean, that business model, and you think about someone like Ryanair or Southwest Airlines, and it was all about taking away food and taking away business class. And so innovation can be as much about taking things out of the business model as it can be about jamming more stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So,
Very. That is in their business, and you think about innovation. What is innovation? Business.
yeah, good. I think Blaine said a lot of what I was going to say, but I think at a high level, macro-wise, people look at innovation and look at the big kind of PR stunts, and, you know, like you said, the Teslas of the world or the Amazons of the world, and those crazy big pieces of PR that talk about innovation. But at the end of the day, innovation is solving problems and how you can do things better and more efficient. It doesn't have technology. One of the biggest things in Zambrero at the moment is staffing challenges that most businesses are facing. So for me,
how can you innovatively incentivize your staff from a retention perspective? How can you give them a business that they want to show up to every day, that is not just driven by the amount of money that you pay them, or the work that they do. So I think those kind of challenges and that innovation is not spoken about because it's not the big PR stunt. It's not a robot picking things off shelves in a supermarket. So I think it's all about problems and how you can solve them and do it in a cost-effective, efficient way, whether it be stock controls, whether it be product. It doesn't have to be consumer-led. It can be business-led. Inflationary pressures right now. It can be product margin-led. There's a whole range of things, and I think that's where innovation makes the most sense, and it's often the ones that you don't read about that give the biggest impact.
Yeah, very true. Thanks, Matt. When I think about both yours and Matt's answer, I do think there needs to be, is innovative something that's proactive or reactive? So when we talk about innovation in the context that we've just talked about it, it's reacting to a macro factor, it's reacting to a competitive factor, but in both cases it's reacting. Is there a distinction for innovation that says, well, gee, to be innovative, I need to have these macro forces at play? Or in fact, I'm going to take something out of blue sky because I just think this could work, and it's proactive.
Well, obviously, I think it can be both. But I think what's just happened with COVID is that we've condensed 10 years of innovation into 18 months. Companies that thought that their digital strategy was going to take 3 years, or that some supply chain innovation was going to take a 3 to 5 year project. CEOs were walking out to their teams and demanding that things be live in 4 weeks. Brands that didn't have an e-commerce presence were selling online within 6 weeks. From zero to full go live. So I think what COVID taught us is actually what we thought we had to do with all this governance and planning and testing and sign off and proof of concept, and that all just went out the window, and we all just went and got a whole lot of stuff done really quickly. Whether that was working out how restaurants could deliver food and service a takeaway market, or whether it was retailers innovating around safety concerns of consumers, or of course online and reacting to the fact that everyone was locked at home. We all moved super fast. So I think that crisis, that necessity drives a lot of innovation, because you're innovating for survival or you're innovating for competitive advantage. In COVID, we're innovating just to keep dollars coming through tills. But having said that, on the other side, in terms of innovation, blue sky thinking, I think it has to be cultural in a business. You have to have a business that is naturally innovative. I don't think taking the exec team off to an island and sitting there and having a 1 week retreat to try to come up with that blue sky idea that's going to radically change your business, there's merit in that. I'm not saying that's of no value, but it's really where the true innovation comes from. It usually comes from rank and file within the business. Somebody's got a great mind, and they're close to a problem, and they see a way around it. And the question is whether the business is listening to them, and whether they're empowered suitably to try to do that. So I think if you want that innovation occurring as an always-on thing, it's got to be coming from your people. It's got to be cultural, not just from the top. And
so maybe I'll briefly. What is an innovative culture? What is an innovative culture?
Well, this is a little bit controversial, I think. I think an innovative culture is a culture with less rules. So the problem is, I always laugh when I see companies that have an innovation department, or an innovation day, or innovation week, or an innovation, and then I kind of think, okay, well, what's happened is they've just jammed so many rules and procedures and processes and governance and protocols and audit into the place that now everybody just comes to work like a robot and does exactly what they're told and goes home, and people are there thinking, well, we could do it better, but no one's going to listen to me, so I won't say it. And so now then suddenly the CEO or the company wakes up and goes, geez, we're not very innovative. Nobody changes anything unless the exec team think of it. And then they've got to go back and incentivize people to be innovative. Well, you've killed it, and then you're just trying to resuscitate it. So I think that innovative cultures are cultures that tolerate risk, that tolerate failure, cultures that have less rules and more guidelines, cultures where everybody understands what the hell the business is trying to do in the first place. Like really understands, not just understands their bit, but understands the whole bit, because if you have the whole picture, you can problem solve better, right? You can problem solve upstream and downstream from your bit. So that involves transparency, and that involves companies sharing more with their staff than we're normally comfortable with, because the more we tell people, you know, the more they might run off and tell our competitors. But if we don't tell people anything, how are they going to innovate? Because they don't know why we do that, or what the margin is there, or why we're trying to minimize that. I think transparency. So all those things that make people really uncomfortable in big listed companies are actually often the soil for innovation culturally.
Great answer, Lloyd. So now, if you think about innovation in your business, do you foster an innovative culture? Is it a word that you use? Is it something that the executive think about, or is it more implicit? It's just the way we do things around here.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, and to Blaine's point, I think having an innovation team, or a week on retreat talking about innovation and trying to come up with the next Uber or Airbnb, I just don't think it's going to help your business. I think that particularly an established business, I think it's really about alignment of staff and really incentivizing that staff to a common goal. So, any business can look at revenue, profit, unit growth, whatever it may be. Does that get your team and staff excited? Not necessarily. If I say I want 400 restaurants, all doing $5 million a year, and a certain profit margin, that's great. And at an exec level and a board level, everyone's happy as shareholders. But for our area manager or for our marketing team, does that get them excited, or do you need to drive them with a focus of, we want to be the 5th largest QSR in Australia, we want to be alongside McDonald's, or we want to be known as this great brand that's great for the world as well. So I think it's about having that transparency that Blaine spoke about, and then empowering the staff to do their jobs better. Every single staff member of my team has a challenge, and I can empower them to use innovative ways to fix that challenge. Whether it be from someone that's trying to monitor regional locations and how they monitor them, how they don't have to drive hours every day to visit those stores, if they can do it remotely in a successful way, and spend more time on things that are going to move the business forward and make those restaurants better. That's what I want to empower them to do, rather than go offsite and think about the next big product that we're going to launch.
And so that it seems to me, listening to you, that purpose and innovation are very clearly linked.
Definitely. I think if you don't know what your role in a business or your role in a team is, I don't know how you can be successful. And if you're talking about innovation and wanting your staff to achieve a goal or achieve an outcome, if they don't know what that outcome is or what their role is in achieving that outcome, how they can impact it, I don't think they'll be able to achieve it. So for us, from a head office, board level down, exec level down, we're pretty transparent with our team on what our goals are and what achieve, and how each member of the team can impact those goals, and we give them the freedoms, obviously within it, to go out and try and achieve that through different methods, whether it be implementing software or technology to do their job better. That's what we focus on.
Anastasia, where are we? So, Anastasia, does the customer drive innovation in a customer-centric organisation, or is it fueled in another? What role does the customer have?
I think that's a very good question there, Brian. And I think in any organisation, we need to be listening to what our customers are saying, because they will be pointing out the pain points and the issues and where we can improve. And I think the customer will be clearly telling you what is not working for them. And I think that then really leads into, well, how do we innovate? It doesn't have to be in the big areas, it is in those small factors. I mean, I mentioned before, the customer's more impatient than ever. So the innovations are coming from, well, how do we remove that friction in the customer journey? So I think really talking to those customers and looking at what is driving them, what is getting them out of bed as well. So in the reverse to where's the friction points, what's really fulfilling them, and where are those needs not being met? What more can we do to give to them? So, yeah.
Sort of think about what all organisations always have sort of a Taylorism model, building silos, departments and divisions in silos. Can that inhibit innovation?
yes, back to my point about sort of bureaucracy. Definitely having separate functions responsible for each thing is, it's an idea that came out of the 70s and the 80s. I mean, if we think about the development of business structures, and going back to some of the academics in that space, they were the ideas that were around in the 70s and the 80s, and in the US in the 50s and the 60s post World War II. These were military ideas that came out of, most of the business leaders in the 50s and 60s in the US were military leaders who'd been successful in World War II, who brought military. That's right, and then they brought these ideas of structure and silos, and we've moved beyond that, and there are alternate structures now in businesses, more organic structures with less hierarchy, more matrix management, which you could argue makes it more complex, not less. But we're seeing sort of individual teams that are empowered, and those alternate structures can definitely, reducing hierarchy in a business can definitely promote innovation. But I just want to come back to something that Anastasia said. She was talking about, you were talking about the consumer-led innovation. And I think that one of the traps here that's really interesting to think about is that I'm not sure customers always know what they want. And I've jumped the gun, have I? Sorry. I think that customers don't always know what they want. So there's a difference between how customers behave and what customers say. And it's often, and I know that's not the point you're making, but that's an often misunderstood perception. So if you think about, a good example is if you think about how goods are delivered during COVID, traditional parcel delivery methods just got thrown out the door. I mean, what happens now is the driver turns up, runs up your stairs, sticks it on the thing, knocks once on the door, takes a photo, runs off. How much easier is that? And you come home and it's there. How much easier is that? Go back 2 years. You had to be home. You had to sign. It must have taken 3 times as long. If you'd asked the consumer, are you happy for someone just to drop it on the doorstep, photograph it, knock once on the door and leave? Most consumers probably would have said no. And now it's annoying if the driver wants us to sign something. So I'm not sure we necessarily always know what it is we want. Because we might say we want fast delivery. Fast delivery is another great example, right? So a lot of surveys will show that customers want things fast, and then you get a question like this in a survey. If you order something online, do you want it within 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours, 24 to 48 hours, or 2 days to a week, or longer than a week? I mean, what box are you going to tick in that survey? So I think, everybody wants it. I want it on a rocket ship 10 minutes before I thought of buying it. But because I just do. But of course I'm going to say that in a survey. But the reality of it is most of the things we buy we don't need urgently. And we're just happy to get them reasonably efficiently within a couple of days. We have business. But there's this fool's gold of this turbocharged rocket ship delivery that we think consumers want. So we spend a fortune giving it to them. And I'm not saying it's not important in some segments, but it's not universally important everywhere. So there's a danger in assuming that consumers want certain things. And so consumer-centric has to be about what consumers actually want in terms of what their behaviour reflects they want, not just what they say they want.
Can I add? Yeah. I completely. I think one of the nuances is exactly that, understanding, predicting their behaviour rather than asking questions. And this is where it really gets that subtlety. I completely agree. I'm a firm believer in predicting consumer behaviour, so understanding their nuances, their personalities, why they do what they do, rather than, yes, you're right. If you ever ask a consumer, do you want things cheaper?
Yeah.
Yes, is the answer. Same as how quick do you want it? As quick as yesterday. And so I think there is that nuances particularly. So it's getting into their minds, understanding why they do what they do.
This has been on to sort of move us, and we touched on this, Matt, regarding purpose. And when I think of purpose in an organisation, Blaine and I were chatting earlier, purpose could be survival, or it could be changing the world. Zambrero is known for its purpose. What is the purpose of Zambrero, and so how does that link to an innovative culture?
Yeah, another good question. I think purpose in the current environment is something that I suppose to Blaine's point, is kind of seen as a table stake of what the customer vocally wants, but whether they actually want it is a different question. I think from our side, and for those that don't know, we donate a meal for every burrito at Wallis sold at any one of our restaurants around the globe, and we've donated over 60 million meals to date, which is obviously a great achievement for our brand. It's something that really, I guess, internally is really important to us, not only for our head office team, but also our network and our staff, and it's a differentiator for us, particularly in the current environment of how we can offer something to staff. But does that affect our business from what we do in selling food? I don't think if our product's right, people will come and buy from us just because we donate a meal. So I think it is a secondary factor and about us as a brand. Whether it leads to innovation, obviously we have some targets on meal donations that we want to donate, but that drives, I guess, how many burritos and bowls we sell. So I don't know if it necessarily drives innovation per se, but it is a problem that we're solving, which we would look to do that. Just touching back on a few things that Anastasia and Blaine said on, firstly, the silos. I think if you look at the structure of organisations and you look at making innovative change, sometimes you need silos to make that happen. And I think if you're looking at businesses now where you're trying to reduce headcount and staff, if you have a collective group talking about how you want to downsize your labour market, that's probably not going to go down well culturally or in your team. So you need a siloed environment to make that happen. And then I think secondly, when you're looking at making an innovative change, people and staff and consumers generally get very comfortable in their own environment. So change management, I think, is what we talk about and need to consider when we look at innovation. I think if you went back 10 years and said, hey, everyone that used to get in taxis that now gets in Ubers, when I first heard about Uber, I was like, what, you get in a random person's car and you don't have to pay. Now I hate getting in a taxi. I would never get it. But that change in behaviour and that change management from that one business has obviously reflected across a lot of industries now. And I think innovation really comes from others' ideas that you can translate into your business, into your problems. And I think we've seen that through the QSR market. Delivery during COVID was massive for us. And if we didn't have that, I think a lot of businesses would have really struggled. So it was serendipitous that it came back in 2017, 2018 when it did to market. So I think, from an innovation perspective, you're kind of always looking at the consumer and what they're telling you, but you need to look at your own problems and how you can leverage off other businesses and ideas.
Anastasia, if I can, through this millennial Gen Z customer, repurposing, recycling, landfill, and so forth, what is the environmental weighting in their consumer choices around sustainability?
Yes, that's a really interesting one that we get asked quite a lot within our research. And I think what we're seeing now with Gen Z millennial, it's more of a hygiene factor. It's not even, as Matt said, the free meal is not going to drive them to the store, but they kind of expect to have some purpose, some sustainability, some ethical sense that is a hygiene factor. What we find quite interesting is that there's quite a differential between, and again, I'm going to talk personalities, because what you actually find is the environmental and sustainability drivers differ quite significantly depending on someone's personality. So it's not just an age factor, it's a personality factor. We're finding certain personality types really driven by environmental. They'll be 80 and there's still the environmental is the main cause. So whilst it's much more vocal from the millennials and Gen Zs through social media channels, through the ability, I think it's this personality aspect as well. We have some where, they're very much driven by activism and they really want to see retailers that they can engage with and be part of that environmental journey.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And Blaine, for your business, Freedom Furniture, how do you speak to this area of sustainability and so forth?
Well, we don't do a very good job in this. And just to clarify that, we don't do a very good job telling our customers what we're doing. And I actually think this is a really good first step for a lot of businesses, and we're working our way through this now, is to understand all of the things that we already do. So this challenge for retailers is extraordinary, because consumerism and sustainability are opposites. So we're all in the consumerism business, and very few of us are in the sustainability business. And then we're trying to find where these two meet. So do you want people to buy more, or do you want people to buy less? And I think this is a challenge that retail and retailers struggle with. And I think one of the ways that we're addressing this is to try to focus on products that last. So quality, this idea that you could buy a buffet or a bed or a sofa and you could still have it in 10 years versus another brand that we talked about earlier where maybe you might only keep that item for 2 or 3 years. So sustainability comes in all forms. And so quality that lasts is a form of sustainability. It's just not a very sexy form of sustainability, but it is a huge form of sustainability because you're reducing the buying cycle and therefore you're reducing the waste. But I think and then we do a lot of other stuff. And all timber that comes into Australia in the form of furniture comes from sustainable sources. There's government regulation around that. So all the timber we use is sustainably forested, but we don't say that. And I think that brands need to get better at talking about what they're already doing. I mean, every time we replace lights to a store, we replace them with LED lights. Who doesn't do that, right? But are you talking about that? And obviously we're recycling and we're starting to use more recycled materials. So as a brand, we don't do that very well, and we're conscious of that. In terms of the next level sexy around sustainability, things like the circular economy and reusing and repairing, I think there are still some, this is going to be an interesting area because it's going to come down to consumers. Are consumers prepared to buy something that isn't new? In a rental model, the first customer gets the new one, right? Then you rent it again, and the second customer gets the used one, and the third customer gets the really used. So it's a great model at the start because everyone's getting new. But 3 years in, your entire fleet of whether it's cars or sofas or dresses is used. And so will people pay money? I mean, obviously there's a massive market and emerging for pre-loved clothing, but that's not the same as that becoming the main source of our wardrobes. So I think there are barriers around consumer behaviour to some of the more sexy elements, whether people want to repair, whether people want to own. I mean, are we hardwired to own things as opposed to not own things? How much status is in shopping, as well as and owning and buying? So I think it's a complex space. We're doing some work in that area, and we can do a lot more. I think there's a lot of upside for a lot of brands in just talking about what they're already doing.
I tend to agree with everything I'd add to that is the elasticity of pricing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if there's a brand of coffee beans, and here's a brand of coffee beans that's 40% more expensive from a sustainable source, what will people do when no one's looking? That's the question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Matt, sustainability in the Zambrero business on the agenda?
Yeah, I think it's a table stake in restaurants now. I mean, again, but it goes back to the industry itself. From a packaging perspective, you can't really get non-biodegradable packaging now. Like it's not really a thing, but it's not spoken about. So packaging, clean chemicals, all those things are as sustainable as they can be, and they're constantly improving. Not just from our perspective. There's things that we put on our tenders that companies and manufacturers must hit, but it's already at those industry and manufacturer levels being done. So for me, we have our plate purpose that we talk about. Sustainability is an expectation. It's not it's not an option really in the sales space. I think it's really interesting though if customers and the price elasticity, whether they will actually pay more for it. I heard a great comment when Donald Trump was elected to the US. And I think this really reflects human behaviour. A colleague of mine was at a conference, and it was about a 3,000 person conference, and everyone on the way in said whether they were voting for Hillary or Donald. And when they got in, the first question that the mediator asked, or the MC asked, was, okay, put your hand up if you voted for Donald Trump on the way in. Not one hand went up, but the real number was 50-50. Yeah. And I think that shows that what consumers say and what they do is not always the same. But irrespective, I think, as a business, you have to have a set of core values that you follow. We have our set of core values, and I think it's implicit in our business. And if you don't apply those values, then you're not going to be successful. So I think whatever those values are, you have to be true to them, and you have to follow them. And you know, they've obviously got to be consumer focused, and that's how you be successful.
Yeah, I think that the point around innovation coming full circle is the linkage between purpose, culture, and if I think about sustainability, it's part of our culture, really the way you talked about it. It's regulated in many ways, but in other ways it comes down to the purpose and innovation. And so, Anastasia, let's very few minutes left. Let's just chat about what you see in the next 20 years, 2 or 3 years, where you think consumers are heading and so on.
Yes, this is a really quite interesting question. How do we see consumers moving? And I think I've touched on it quite a bit today. This impatient consumer, I think we're going to see a lot more of this expectation of I want it easy, I want it quick, I want it fast. I want it on a rocket ship from delivered 10 minutes before I've thought about it. So I think we're going to see that move more in that customer mindset. Just make my life easier. It doesn't have to be quicker, just make it easier for me. And I think as well, we're going to see much more of this entertainment aspect. So I think customers are looking for entertainment. They value their time. So I think what COVID taught customers was that time is important and you must spend your time wisely. So I think we're going to see that aspect of I value my time even more so, and how can you create an experience worth my time? So I think this is where we're going to see that movement. And this is where this really interesting innovations in the in-store experience. In that augmented reality, I think we're going to see that increased use. So a lot of the research that we say shows that the consumers are using this augmented reality to visualize their products, to try them on at home, to have their sofas visualized in their living rooms. And I think we're going to see more of that from that entertainment aspect of consumers.
Yeah, we talk about time as a currency, of course, as an example of that. I think if I was thinking about this question to support you, I think also thinking about the time of the consumer 24 hours. So as retailers, we would think about traditional time of the consumer from 9 till 5. Now we think of it in a 24 cycle. And of course, as so much of our path to purchase work shows, the path has started well before the physical environment's touched, well before. Thank you. Blaine, I'm going to ask you just a bit of crystal balling about this thing called retail over the next 3 to 5 years. Can you give a sense of where it's all going? It's a broad canvas to play on.
Yeah, I think that maybe just disconnected points and people can stitch them together. You can stitch them together yourselves. I think that COVID felt like it was this huge game changer in terms of how consumers shopped, and there was this huge flock to digital and e-commerce. And I think looking back, and why wouldn't there have been? We were all locked in our homes. I think that what happened though, that there was everyone sort of piled on, and I think a whole lot of pure play operators sort of went, our has come. And ordered a lot of inventory, a couple of big entities there, a ton of inventory, and then got a heap of trouble, because what happened was we were all locked in our homes and we couldn't go out, push a button and get anything at the door. What did we want? Just wanted to shop. We didn't want to be locked in our homes we didn't want to buy, we wanted to shop, and you made that distinction at the start. So I think that increasingly stores and retail experiences need to be remarkable, worth remarking on. And I think that's just going to be more and more that it's worth leaving the home for. It's experiential. And I think we have to just be careful about how that intersects with efficiency. Because when you talk to technologists, they talk about efficiency. Let's strip all the friction. I'm really skeptical of this word frictionless. Let's strip all the friction out of shopping. Well, if you strip all the friction out of stuff, which that with is a really Blaine experience, friction actually makes things interesting. Not all pain points, but friction. If you take a brand like TK Maxx, where you go in and you have to rummage through that store, and they have all the odd sizes, and people love that, right? But if you go into a store and it's heavily curated and there's signage and you know exactly where to go, it can be very sterile. So when we talk about shopping, we might want an exploratory Aladdin's cave of discovery that's a little bit clunky. So I think that's a trend that we're going to see, that stores that are stickier and maybe there's more friction. You might want to hang around there longer rather than get out fast. Yeah, like the maze of IKEA and other things like that. And I think the other thing is, I think ultimately most of what we've talked about here, particularly in innovation, is it's people-centric. I think increasingly the biggest trend in retail is going to be that we're all waking up and realising how important our people are. Without the right people, we're not innovating. Without the right people, we're not even opening our shops. The war for talent is just getting fiercer and fiercer and fiercer, and brands that can't retain. Attracting is great, but why are you attracting? How come you lost somebody in the first place? So I think brands need to start by understanding why they're not retaining. You know, I saw a thing in the paper about a million people will change jobs. The great resignation. Well, it's not a resignation. It's a migration. They're all going to leave jobs they don't like to go to a job someone else didn't like. So I think the beneficiaries of that will be companies that keep people. You know, and I think that the war for talent is going to be fierce, and I think so the more people-centric we can be and engage our people with purpose and why and transparency, I think that's going to be critical for retail. It's going to become a differentiating. Yeah.
Matt, how do you feel about the next few years in this thing called retail, and in your case, QSR retail?
Yeah, I think the next few years, COVID has been great for retail for a number of reasons. It's obviously moved the industry forward 2 to 5 years from where it was going. There's a lot of free money out there in the market, and consumers had more money than they've probably ever had to spend during that, 2020 to really now. And I think there's free money in the market that hasn't dried up yet. I think, this is the first time in a long time where we're experiencing serious inflationary pressures, staffing shortages, are truly an issue, not just in retail, but every single industry. And I think that cascades. So for us, Blaine Callard, staff is the most important, and having a connected staff that is empowered and incentivized the right way is critical. I think the next 3 years, the consumer is going to change a little bit, and it's going to be more challenging for retail. I think it'd be remiss not to look at the macro factors to say that it's just going to be easy. So for me, I think it's about, if that consumer spend or behaviours change, how can you maintain a bigger piece of the pie? So how you manage your margins with your transaction volumes and revenue is going to be critical, and those that do that best will be the most successful. And I think that's where innovation is going to be most important, both from a customer perspective, but from an operations and efficiencies perspective. So I think for me, retail, it's all about maintaining margin, but not letting that customer revenue drop. And I suppose the final point that I just made on innovation generally, it hasn't been spoken about, but the iPhone coming in, 10, 15 years ago when it came in, that's been the biggest change in innovation. And that's led to most of the innovation in most consumer-led businesses these days, being able to go look anything up on your phone and understand reviews, where a store is, competitors. You couldn't do that 20 or 30 years ago. So I think everything that's led is out of the phone and out of the consumer's ability to have everything to hand and the amount of time they spend on the devices. So I think really looking at that and how you can shape your business to make the most of that, I think that's probably critical going forward.
Yeah, it's a great point. That when we look at the future of retail and great detail, there's a very clear path for the end of the iPhone. Now that will come in time. There will be sensors and integrated wear and so forth. But the point you make to me is that innovation is on a continuum. So it's not this static. I think you make that point very well. Any questions from the audience, ladies and gentlemen? Just start to wrap it up. Mike?
I've got one. Blaine, years into the transformation of freedom, how did you manage the relationship with franchisees and companies?
Yeah, so that's right. So the Freedom is a 40-year-old brand that's we're in year 3 of a turnaround, and that's a long conversation. But, balancing franchise and company stores, there's a legacy of having both within the brand, and there's been historically a lot of tension actually. But I think fundamentally, franchisees are looking for a business that does the right thing and provides an environment where they can make profit. So I think that in a lot of ways, the repair of the Freedom brand and the return of the Freedom brand to profitability is the journey the franchisees want to come on. And so it's actually a hugely unifying process, bringing the franchisees and the company stores together because there's a common goal. And I think that if you when we talk to the franchisee about what were their pain points, particularly going back 2-3 years when we were in the diagnostic phase, you know, they would have a lot of friction with the franchisor. But actually, when you dig beneath it, that wasn't the issue. The issue was the margins weren't good enough, or the product wasn't right, or the marketing wasn't helping to drive business to their stores. So actually, it's all the same issues that face the company stores. So I'm reasonably channel agnostic. If our company stores flourish, our franchisees flourish. If our franchisees flourish, our company stores flourish. Alignment is hugely important. If you have a situation where the company benefits when the franchisee has a detriment, that misalignment stops it. And we have one of those now. We have a particular issue around how e-commerce sales are fulfilled from a central DC and whether they're allocated to franchisees within a postcode. It's not covered by the agreement, but the way we're going to resolve that is alignment. So everyone wins. There's no win-lose. Win-lose is very toxic in that kind of environment. So, but, you know, alignment is, I hope that's sort of an answer.
Sales fixes it.
Sales fixes it.
All right, Anastasia, I think we might thank Blaine and Matt.
Yeah, fantastic. It's been a fantastic session, and so thank you very much, Blaine and Matt. Great conversation, great questions, as always. And thank you for everyone for coming out today. Like I said, we've had a couple of false starts on the event, so you know it's been a difficult one this time. But hopefully, we do hold our events usually around every 2 to 3 months. So keep an eye out for the next one. We will hopefully get back to a regular schedule. Should floods, COVID, everything else, Queens, Kings allow, we'll be back on our schedule. But just a reminder of a few things that are coming up. So you can nominate now. This can be your business or it can be anyone else's business. There's all the different categories. So digital innovation, FMCG, research, omnichannel, social cause, inspiring leader. If there's particular CEOs that you want to nominate or leaders, and customer experience. So it's really quite an interesting award. They're just opening today. The winners will be announced at the event at the end of March. And you will receive an email from me today with the ability to download global reselling. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our speakers.
Thank you. Well done, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you.